and welcome to Crafting a Revolution, the podcast. My name is Katie Freeman, and I'm one of your hosts. Every week, we bring you interviews with makers of all kinds from all around the globe that identify as female, non-binary, or transgender. Today's guest is SaraBeth Post. SaraBeth has just completed her time at Penland School of Craft in the Core Fellowship Program. Therefore, she is in a big transition. It's exciting to venture back out into the world, and SaraBeth is looking very forward to the opportunities ahead. Her primary medium is glass, but she is also a bit of a metalsmith and is quite interested in printmaking techniques. In 2015, she earned her BFA in 3D Studios, concentrating in glass with a creative writing minor at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. Reiki energy healing and meditation are non-material practices that she appreciates. It was a joy getting to spend time with SaraBeth Post and learning more about all the ways that she's not only active in her craft, but active in the community of craft and artists. I thoroughly enjoy chatting with her, and I know you're going to enjoy our conversation as well. Before we hop into it, though, I want to give a big shout out and thanks to the patrons over on Patreon, especially Matthew from Artigiano Serio, who is our podcast patron sponsor. Thank you also to Candace, CJ Woodgrain, Lee at Lee Runyon, Annette, 513 Woodworks, Katie, Women of Woodworking, Kevin, Lefty's Woodshop, Christy, Twisted Twine, Jeremy Speece, Sammy, Go Sammy Lee, Rachel, Moody Makes, Laura, Oakley Soap Company, Brandy, Studio Obey, Ellen, Little Bear Furniture, Ethan Carter Designs. Thank you all so very much for your continued ongoing support, helping to make this podcast happen. If you are enjoying the podcast, please stick around to the end of the episode and I will share ways that you can support. Okay, let's head on into my conversation with SaraBeth Post of Ultra Lit. All right. Well, Sarah, I like to ask my guests to introduce themselves. So would you do that for me?
Yeah, I have to start by saying my first name is SaraBeth.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm SaraBeth Post. I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I just recently relocated here from Penland, North Carolina. I was in the Core Fellowship Program at Penland School of Craft and finished in February. I work with glass in a variety of ways: sculpture, jewelry, and production utilitarian ways.
Okay, awesome. And also, can you share with us your pronouns?
Yeah, my pronouns are she, her.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My pronouns also are she, her. So, and Penland, that's exciting to get to spend time there. I feel like it's Disneyland for makers and artists. Like, I just feel like that would be the vibe for it. I have not been there myself yet, but it's definitely on my to-do list.
Yeah, you definitely have to go. I feel like, all of the studios are amazing, but the wood shop, I'm not a woodworker. When you walk in there, it's like, oh my God, it's amazing. But yeah, I'm really fortunate. I spent 3 years in a 2-year program because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved to the area about 1.5 years before I was in the program to work with a resident artist, Dean Allison. So I got to know Penland pretty well.
Awesome. Yeah, I in August, my family, we're taking a trip to the Smoky Mountains, and we will be on the North Carolina side. But I looked it up. I'm like, I might as well look up how close Penland is, like, to our location. And it's still like a couple hour drive. So the only hope I have to go then is if I can talk my children into the idea that it will be cool. I promise.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah. So did you go there to study glass then?
Sort of. To being in the program, you get to choose any different medium. Okay. And I went to school for glass, but going back to school in a way, it was kind of my alternative to graduate school. Mm-hmm. I really want to write papers and do all those other things that traditional academia provides for you.
Yes, yes.
I just wanted to be hands-on. So part of that was to, fine tune some of my glass, but I really experimented. I took printmaking and metalsmithing, which is now kind of my like secondary focus, and took a wood class and a metals workshop. Just tried to branch out and see if there was anything else that would sort of push my vision further.
Yeah, awesome. I had Christina Cordova on the podcast, so I know she teaches at Penland in clay and sculpture. Yeah.
Yeah, she lives almost like on campus.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, she's a staple at Penland.
Yeah, she does amazing work. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, so you went that route. And now I'm going, I feel like much later in life, I'm going the MFA route myself, in 3D design, furniture design. So I'm not branching out too much, but my secondary, at least what I'm hoping for right now, is printmaking.
Nice.
Just because I feel like there's, I don't know, like I could make my own prints for upholstery or whatever. So I'm excited to try something new because I haven't done that ever before.
Yeah, print is exciting because once you think outside of paper, when you work with other mediums, you're like, this is endless.
Yes.
On the walls, I can put on a mirror.
Yeah.
And there is a process. Now, glassmakers have adopted printmaking, but with glass powders. So you can create an image all in glass, but using print. And so that's pretty exciting. I've only experimented a little bit with that, but I would love to try some more.
Is that similar to enameling at all, that process?
I think in a way, if you think of like enameling and sifting through it is similar, but you can actually expose a screen that has like a larger mesh and then pull the powder through. So
nice.
Very similar.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool. So before diving even further down that rabbit hole, I want to just step back and kind of ask like the bigger story of SaraBeth. Where'd you grow up, and kind of your journey into getting into the art world?
I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is the capital, and a lot of people don't even know that because they think it's Philly. But yeah, so it's like central PA. And while I was in high school and talking with friends about what am I going to do after high school, I really did not have a thing in mind. But a friend of mine was like, I have this wild idea. I'm going to try glass making. And I was like, what is that? Like, never heard of it, ever at all. And she explained to me and said that there's a program at our community college, which is kind of rare for a community college to have a whole glass setup. And so like at that conversation, I sort of was like, yeah, we'll go into business together, like kind of thinking about like pipes and having a head shop. And then I went to school. Andrea never did. And I got hooked. And I don't make pipes at all. That's like, I don't even smoke. But once I started to learn glass, and it's terrifying. And that's sort of the appeal too, is like this scary, like hot thing, like what can I touch? What can't I touch? It gave me a focus that I didn't have. I was sort of like a party girl, going to festivals and, just living life. But then once I started to kind of focus in on how I could create with glass, that just was it. Yeah.
So like, it's interesting you said that about the community college, because like the only like in my state of Iowa, the only place left that has like a large kiln for glass is at a community college that's about 30 miles away from me. And I made a custom floor lamp for somebody, and we reached out to the instructors at that school with the glass to make a custom blown, like, lampshade or glass piece for the top of the floor lamp. So it was yeah, it was pretty interesting and cool to kind of get to check out that space and see it in real life. Like, to that point, I think I only ever have seen a glass shop on Blown Away. That's about it. So
Which is a cool show, actually.
yes.
Like this, I'm excited for the upcoming season because I've known a couple people on each season because glass is a small community.
Yeah.
But I think this one's going to be really entertaining coming out.
I can't wait. I definitely like binge watch those seasons for sure. Like, I'm hooked.
Episodes are short.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, I mean, obviously a lot of crafts are like really physically intense. Like, especially if you're on a clock, right? Like, those shows put you on a clock. So you're like really into it. But I don't know, like there's something I feel connected to the glass ones because like I make wood sculptural pieces. So it's just, I don't know, it's nothing alike, but similar enough that I feel like, okay. It's also a field though that I feel it's small, but I feel like it's not very representative of like, it's not very open, I guess. I feel like it's been fairly male dominated. Am I off, or is that pretty accurate?
You're not off. It's interesting because I actually do know a lot of women glassmakers. Mm-hmm. And like, of course, some of like the glass blowers I grew up as I was like learning, I was like, like right. Callan and Catherine Gray, who is, part host of Blown Away, they're amazing. And so there are some, but definitely not as many as the men in the field. And I've worked for more men. I don't even know if I've worked for a woman in the hot shop, but most of my jobs have been for men. And that's kind of like part of my trajectory was like, I'm thankful for all of the people that I've worked for, different things that I've learned, but I want to work for myself and like give that like female voice, but also, be a role model or provide down the line. Maybe I'll have an assistant, and in my head, I'm like, definitely a woman or a non-binary and BIPOC, like I want to be able to provide those types of opportunities that I had, because that's often how you learn in classes. You just have to work your way up through assistantships and apprenticeships, and then it takes a while to get into your own lane, but it's possible.
Yeah. And that was the other thing, because I talking with Annie Evelyn of Crafting the Future, and we were talking more about her, her chairs. But we did spend some time talking about glass and beyond it being like kind of heavily male dominated, it's also like pretty heavily white and very, very few. I think she said there was like 4. Like people of color in there.
Our team is growing. I work with Annie with Crafting the Future. I'm the social media coordinator. And Corey, who's our executive director, is my best friend. And we actually met in 2013 at a glass workshop in Corning. And so our conversation about like being Black in the field was like instant. That was
Yes.
the first conversation we had. And I'm super fortunate. My professor in school is one of two Black, glass professors in the country that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's rare. And there's a team. Well, we kind of have two names. There's the Better Together, which is an event that Cedric Mitchell and Corey Pemberton put on in LA, calling for all the Black glass floors.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah.
To like come out there. And that happened beginning of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was real special for all of us to just get together and work together under one space. And yeah, it was probably the first time many of us had met, and also like more than two be in a studio at a time.
Yep.
And it's been growing since then. We just had a residency together as a group out at Pilchuck Glass School. And then we did a closing demo at the Glass Art Society conference. And that was awesome because we had our team, which was like the headlining.
Yeah.
But then we invited all of the BIPOC students in glass and whoever was around to come out. And there's a photo. Now there's like, we're growing. And you kind of just have to like shout out like, hey, I'm here. Where are you?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I guess I want to the podcast is available both audio and visual, but I would say most of my audience definitely just listens. So just to clarify, can I get you to tell us how you identify so people can feel like they're following along with this conversation?
Yeah, I identify as being a mixed race female. I present very white, actually. And my mom is Black, my dad is white, and my name, the brand that I use for my production line is Ultra Lit. And that actually was coined by, when I was in undergrad, I was a creative writing minor, and I wrote a lot of poetry and reflected a lot on what it was to navigate as basically being a passing woman. And how I relate to Black culture, or how I really don't sometimes, like being this in between type of person. So I was trying to label exactly what my skin color was, and it's ultra light. And so that to me, it sounds like cigarettes or beer, like a really bad one. And so it's not good. And so I just changed it to Ultra Lit, and that was my pen name when I was trying to write in that specific subject.
I think it goes with I would say that goes with, to me, with one of the pictures you sent with the big flame. Like, to me, I think of that when you say Ultra Lit. It's like, hot shot, fire, got it.
A lot of people are like, oh, stoner. I get it, but not, no.
Yeah, totally. So you said that the community college had a course. Did you do an associate degree there, or did you just kind of get your feet wet and move on to another school?
I did get an associate's. I don't think they even offer it anymore.
Oh, wow.
It was contemporary crafts marketing, a 2-year program. So alongside of learning, how to make stuff, there were classes about prototyping and how to move from a prototype to a product for a arts festival. That's kind of the route that we did. There's a what's it called? Capona Arts Fest in Harrisburg on the riverfront. So we entered the market through that stream.
Today's episode is sponsored by Athena Outfitters. Athena Outfitters is a quality workwear brand for hardworking women that sells everything badass beauties need to get the job done, from work boots to basics. They curate the toughest essentials made to help you perform, every piece is handpicked to seamlessly slide right into your daily lifestyle, from rugged and roguish weekday wear to effortless weekend flair. You can fill your closet with gear that can do it all. So for Christmas, I ordered my wife like a very nice pair of slippers from Athena Outfitters, and she loves them. Loves them so much that she has accidentally gone to the gym and the grocery store in them because they seem to never leave her feet. So definitely a place to go check out, go get the goods that help you not only out in the shop, but just in your daily work around the house and outdoors. As a listener of the podcast, you can go to Athena Outfitters website and use coupon code M as in M&Ms 15 for 15% off any purchase. So again, you go to athenaoutfitters.com and use the code MM15 and get 15% off of your purchase at checkout.
And that was kind of not enough for me, as far as it was only 2 years and I really wanted to keep working with glass, and not necessarily forgetting like how to make stuff to sell, but I wanted to kind of figure out like what was I trying to say. So from Harrisburg Area Community College, I moved on to the University of Louisville in Kentucky to work towards my BFA, concentrating in glass. And Shay Rhodes is the professor there. And it was very not at all about like making stuff to sell. It was like, what's a concept? How do you present that, art? And it was a challenge for me because I never really had dove into that. I'm just kind of like I've evolved now, but I was very much a process. Like I want to start here and I want to get to this point. And so it was a challenge, but I feel like it was a great route for me to experiment and think about just the world differently and not have to monetize everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a whole different, I'm pretty much, I took woodworking courses at like a community college when we lived in California, but like since I've been my own business, it's like always been about like, how do I monetize this? So that is actually one of the things I'm like looking forward to with the master's program, is to like go through this process, which part of that, the program I am in, is still a bit about like monetizing, but I think a lot of it is about like design for design's sake. And so I definitely am looking forward to like trying to work my brain in a different way than what I've been doing, because I know at least for me, and I don't know if it was the same for you when you were like in your associate's program, but like I come up with an idea and then usually the end result that I get is not that original idea I came up with, because I had to make like concessions or changes to be like, this thing that I want to do is going to take too long, which means I won't be able to sell this because it will be too expensive. So I'm going to cut that out. Like it's almost not a fully, but a little bit of a watered down version of what maybe I initially wanted to go after, just because I'm like, nobody's gonna pay me for the 900 hours that it took to like make this thing. Yeah.
And now I kind of have all of these different practices, and it just depends on sort of the time in the year,
like
what my focus is or what I have time for. If I'm invited somewhere, then I'm most likely going to make what I call like sculpture, or that work that has more of a voice to it that people can sit with. But like I love the process of production and kind of repeating things and always having to tweak it a little bit. And when that type of like object gets into the hands of people more readily than
Yeah.
a sculpture that costs thousands of dollars. It's actually really satisfying to see
Yep.
like, oh my God, my cup is over here and somebody's wearing my ring over there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, similar. It's like, I also, basically at the same time as I'm preparing to go back to school in August, I am getting my first like CNC, and the whole intent is so like I can have like production, and then I can have more, artisan pieces that like the production will keep me afloat while I work on artisan pieces and find like that very specific, like right client for that work.
Absolutely. It's a good balance because you're always making that way.
Right. Exactly. And that I guess definitely is the dream for me, is to always be making. But I was gonna ask, because I've heard, some people talk about, do you feel like, does doing kind of flexing both those, the production, the sculptural work, do you ever feel like the work aspect takes away from like the love of the craft?
That's interesting. I feel like I think about this sometimes because it's like when you are doing the same thing over and over, it's like, oh my God, one more.
Yeah.
More. It's always one more.
Yes.
But that passes really quickly, because I think in the end, like that is like my passion. That's anybody's passion that is making, is to be able to do that as much as possible. And if you're making a living from it and you're your own boss, and if you're not making something that you like, then you can change that. You have the ability to do anything you want. So yeah, I try to not get annoyed with myself when there's so much monotony.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, sometimes I struggle with, like, I'm like, oh, I make this, and that. If you ask somebody what I make, they might be able to tell you like this one thing, but it's pretty open, it's broad. And that is probably comes out of like getting not even bored, just like wanting to try something else. And I often come back to, a lot of different things, but because I have the ability to do what I want to do in the studio, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I know that's the same for me. It's like, even if I'm doing something, to be fair, right now, I rarely make two of an object. I might make like two plant propagation stations, but they look nothing alike, right? Like the functionality is the same, but they're not gonna like look the same. So I don't have that level of monotony, but even when I do kind of get in that zone, I'm still like always thinking about like, oh, what if I tried this thing? I haven't seen anyone ever try this, like whatever weird thing that I'm thinking about. And so it's fun to just get into that experimental mode too. And like you said, like being your own boss, like allows you to be able to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. And like, if you're in the opposite, when you're the employee, it's like, you don't want to be yelled at, or like you're going to treat yourself good because that's what you want.
Exactly. So what do you get to work with for studio space?
I'm really fortunate right now. I moved to Pittsburgh, and this is one of the classrooms that is in my house. My partner and his best friend bought an old schoolhouse in a neighborhood and have transformed that into our live workspace. They're both glassmakers as well. So in another room, we have a flame working setup. So, sometimes I work with glass out of the furnace, but that's a lot of equipment. But the torch for flame working, which most of my jewelry is made with, is a torch, it's propane and oxy, and it's really accessible.
Yeah.
So I have that at home, and I also have a metalsmithing setup. That's kind of set up in the metalsmithing room right now. It's
Okay.
a flux room. But there's also about 20 minutes from here is the Pittsburgh Glass Center. And I have a lot of friends that work there. And eventually, once I kind of get situated, I've been traveling a lot, I'll also use that space and rent time to make different things. Mm-hmm.
Very cool. First of all, very cool that you bought an old school.
Yeah.
I would never have even thought of that, but that's like genius.
Yeah. I never would have thought of it either.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, this is so much space. I can't even comprehend.
Right.
But we can change and like modify everything. That put a lot of time into like just refinishing windows and like bringing it back to really nice wood below like layers and layers of paint.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you think like do you foresee like that you guys could open up your space to teaching? Like, I don't know if that's something that you would see on your horizon or not.
Yeah, I don't know if we would have that here because it is also our home.
Right.
And just like legality of certain things, we kind of like try to keep it on the low that we have lots of flames inside. But that's also kind of the great thing about the Glass Center is, you know, we're really good friends with them, and there are different opportunities to teach locally if I wanted to pursue that. Yeah.
Do you have any interest in teaching?
Yeah, I'm going to teach at the Corning Museum of Glass, the studio there, in July. And that program, I'm actually really excited because my first like glass job was there. So I'm coming full circle. Like my first like real teaching at like a craft school. So that program is called Expanding Horizons, and they have students coming in with a mentor from different programs like Project Fire, which is in Chicago. And they are students that work with Pearl Dick in the hot shop primarily. And a lot of them have been affected by gun violence. So it is like an outreach program. And we're going to be talking about like how to make kiln form objects towards sort of like a business model of like production, and in the end discussing like what maybe a good product is, how do we talk about a product, how do we get it out there. But working with young adults or like teenagers is something that I really find a lot of joy in. When I was in North Carolina, before I started the core program, I worked with the Rural Education Partners of Mitchell County, which is the county outside of Penland, which is very different from the bubble that is.
I'm sure.
It's very rural, like it says. But I taught after school art, and I had a group of mostly girls, and I was in different middle schools, and they taught me a lot about, you know, just being yourself. And it was actually difficult for some of them to live where they did and to actually be themselves with different adults, because they were not necessarily, you know, comforted enough to be out, to be queer, or to like view people that are different from them as like valid. So in our classroom, it was like everything stays in here, but we talked about, you know, like how it is to be a woman. Like it was an open space. Like day one, I was like, I'm mixed and my best friends are gay. And so I'm coming to the classroom like that. And that's I accept everyone and want to help you do the same. And so, that type of impact, I think, was like really important for me. And I want to keep teaching in that way. As far as like working with students that those students in North Carolina were sort of selected by, their counselors or from different teachers and principals, seeing creative students that kind of needed something. And so, yeah, I think I was always like an oddball myself, even though I hung out with like a ton of people, I always felt like on the outskirts. So those are the types of students that I'm like, let's come together. Let's, make stuff and feel good about it, feel good about being ourselves and like putting that into what we're making. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I do feel like, I don't know, these younger generations are much more like open to those kinds of conversations and looking for those spaces and maybe advocating for themselves a little bit better than definitely better than my generation did, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And it was like I grew up more in the city and then in the suburbs, and definitely didn't know much about North Carolina. So I learned a lot with them, and it took time, but I became a resource for like one of the students in particular. Like when the pandemic started, I tried to reach out, and we did like one-on-one talks through Google or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were able to open up to me things that they couldn't to their teachers or to their parents. And so I was just happy that I could be an adult figure that they were like able to talk to. And like, not that I have great advice, but I'm not going to judge you, you know?
Yeah, I think most of the time, and this is for adults too, I think most of the time when any of us are looking for advice, we're not really looking for advice, we're looking for permission to believe ourselves. I think that really is the case. Like, I just need somebody to be like, no, you're like, it's okay that you're thinking that way. Like,
normal. Like,
yeah,
all is good, and most of the people around you just are in some weird hole.
Yes. Exactly. So, I mean, I want to kind of touch on then, like, so you've got the the teaching coming up, which that does sound really exciting. And as the little bit I know about the glass world, I know like Corning is like, oh, right. Like it's like the big place to kind of go to.
Yeah.
Outside of those, like how else, like, are you actively making, pieces right now? And like, how do you sell them? Like all those kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Like right now, I just started to work on another like avenue in the jewelry studio, which is combining glass and metals. I've had like for the longest time, I've been trying to come up with a pair of earrings that is both, and I just couldn't do it. And something clicked yesterday. And I was like, oh my God, I think I did it. So that's what's on the bench right now. So you could watch my Instagram and slowly I'll be like, look at this new thing. But yeah, because that's the most accessible at my home studio is I have the torch, which I make all my beads on. And then I have the metal studio, which, as long as I have some wire or some sheet metal, I can just play around and figure out something. But I'm also always kind of working on what are these like wall installations that I've been making out of cast glass letters. And while I was at Pilchuck, it was a group residency, so we all worked together in the hot shop and made different things. But I kind of was off a little bit, trying to cast more letters, because any phrase, takes kind of a lot.
Yes.
So I just have to keep making them. And I got a decent number of letters made while I was away. And so it's enough for me to play around with, to work towards, still writing and trying to figure out a new phrase, or composition.
Mhm.
But that's kind of a thing that's also always on deck. It takes a lot longer to make, just because I tend to like make as many letters as I can, and then put them out in front of me, and my head and my brain start to like do this and connect the dots, and I'll write on the side. And then I don't really, oftentimes I don't write out a thing and then make it. Make parts of it and then think on it, keep making parts, and then something comes and I'm like, okay, now I need this amount of ease, because I know what I'm after, which is fun, because I just keep on like making. It's a longer process. Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Mhm.
It got my brain squirreling down the path of the people who make like the LED neon signs. Yeah, like I could see it being like, oh, that just sounds like fun.
Yeah, I did learn my last class at Penland, when I finished core, was a neon class. Well, it was neon and glass blowing with Jen Ellick and Jeremy Burt. So I got to do some neon, and I was definitely like, oh yeah, letters, duh.
Yeah.
They're hard. Like if you look at a neon sign up close, especially letters, and you see like the things behind it that aren't lit up, it's like, oh my goodness. But that's it's like a lot of why we all like to make things, is there's a challenge in that.
Yeah, exactly. Do you feel like do you think you'd go on and do any more schooling at this point?
I am taking a workshop at Pilchuck this summer. I got a scholarship, and I do think sometimes about grad school, but it would probably more be geared towards education, I think. I have thought about art therapy, but there's not as much like funding for those programs. And I feel like I've done a lot of school.
Right.
Being at Penland, even though it's like craft and that's what you're doing, all of the instructors that come there are amazing.
Right.
And so you're getting more than just like technical hands-on things. Like there are a lot of discussions, and even just the community of Penland too. I feel like I was always learning in different ways. So now I'm thinking I'm like more prepared to teach and try and like all the stuff that I've taken. It's like, okay, it's time to like help others get to that point.
Yeah. So I also then want to kind of maybe use that to segue into how'd you get into the crafting the future?
So I know Corey and Annie, and I went out to the Better Together event in LA, and that was Better Together is like was a partner to Crafting the Future, but is now kind of absorbed by, and just having different conversations with both Annie and Corey about what Crafting the Future is doing, where it's going. And Penland has like the mothership, which is like a bunch of different artists that were helping with different fundraising for CTF. And I told Corey, I was like, oh, I have this great idea for Black History Month. You should do interviews on Instagram Live because, you know, it was also the pandemic. So everything was on Instagram Live. And he was like, great, you should do that for us. I was like, oh. I guess it was my idea and I'll roll with that.
Yeah.
So I volunteered myself. And that was like the beginning of trying to like figure out how I could continue to being active. Yeah. So they kind of didn't have somebody that was like posting regularly. And I'm a nerd when it comes to Instagram. I'm just like, I like being on there. I like stuff. I like posting.
Right.
I just, yeah. And a lot of people, I guess, don't actually enjoy that. So I was, you know, they asked if I would be interested and I was like, yeah, for sure. So that's how I'm now like on the team doing that thing.
Okay. Yeah. So then you probably saw all my tags over the last.
Yeah. It was kind of fun and funny because I like got brought on and then it was a week later and they were like, oh, did we tell you about the fundraiser we're doing? And I was like, no. And they were like, then we started talking about it. I was like, oh, this is all a social media thing.
Yes.
The fundraiser I'm doing. Yeah, so hashtag CTF DIY. I was the one reposting everything and trying to comment as much as I could.
Yes.
It was awesome to see because I'm not gonna lie, at first I was like, ooh, we'll see how this goes. I'm not really sure because Instagram, like obviously people are still using it, but it's not like early in 2020 when that's just what people were doing all day long.
Yep.
Or out and about now. So I just like, we'll see. And I was really surprised and happy with how many artists participated. And, you know, it was a way for our followers who are the makers to be able to talk to their followers about the organization. And it was really successful. So thank you for participating.
You're welcome. I missed the week that you like, it was like the official week, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure they'll still take the money. So I'll just like, I'll just add on to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we did put a date on it just to see, like, let's motivate people.
Yeah.
Try and make it this solid thing, but more it is like the model to show people, especially artists, like we don't have a lot of money. Most of
us. Yeah.
So, you have lots of stuff.
Yes.
And we're happy to make things.
Yes.
And so it can be like always an ongoing method to like trying to help out.
Yeah, I mean, and it's one that's used like a lot for a lot of artists, like locally too, right? It's the same thing. Like there's several organizations locally that, you know, I try to give to, but I don't always have the free flowing cash to like do that even from my business. And so, but it's like, oh, you guys are doing a silent auction to raise money. Okay, well, here's this thing you can like auction off to help raise money. Like that's, you know, it's a little bit easier, I guess, in that regard to give of a gift than always to be able to give of my wallet, though I do both. I am a member of CTF, so
yeah.
Yes. I want to give you a chance though, because we are getting at the end, to let people know how they can see all your work specifically, like, you know, CTF I share about, and now we know like you're the person behind that, behind the posting, but your work specifically, can you let us know how to find that?
I have a website. It is sarabethpost.net, SaraBethPost.net. And that kind of shows like all my sculpture, and I have a little shop on there. but my Instagram handle is ultralit.sb, and I'm on there pretty regularly. And then from there, I have a link to my website too.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Awesome. And I'll include links to all of that on the show notes for the episode so people can easily find that. I'm going to say thank you for chatting with me today, and especially thank you for dealing with the several interruptions. Summer, yay!
Yeah, thank you for having me. I kind of was like, oh my gosh, why would somebody reach out to me to talk with them? But
Because I'm kind of a glass nerd, I think. It's like carved spoons, which I don't make, carved spoons and blown glass. Those are like the two things that I obsess over that I don't personally make, that I'm just like, oh, that's just so cool.
we'll have to talk after the next season of Blown Away comes out.
Absolutely. All right, awesome. Well, yeah, thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, so again, that was SaraBeth Post of Ultralit, and I will include the links on how you can follow along with her and her work in the show notes for today's episode. Best places to find that is check the description on your podcast app. If you're watching this on YouTube, please check the description box down below. And lastly, you can head on over to freemanfurnishings.com/podcast. And you can find today's episode as well as all the past episodes. Make sure to follow along with the podcast over on Instagram at Crafting a Revolution. That's all one word, no spaces, underscores, dashes, none of that. So at Crafting a Revolution. If you are enjoying the podcast, especially today's episode, please head on over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. That immensely helps the podcast get more eyes and ears on it. You can get in touch with your host, myself, Katie Freeman, at Freeman Furnishings on Instagram and all social media, and my co-host, Katie Thompson, at Women of Woodworking and Pen and Chisel across all social media as well. We always enjoy chatting with those who engage with the podcast. Next week, we will be back with one brand new episode. And in the meantime, as always, let's go craft a revolution. She, her,